Hello, citizens of the verse. The salvaging career has been described by the good people of Aegis as a search for riches and secrets hidden among the vast debris fields scattered across the verse, of which there is going to be plenty of, and growing with every day thanks to the increased presence of the UEE military, the rise of pirate activity, the clashing waves of battle created by competing orgs, and the good old-fashioned poetic indifference of the verse, and all the unknowns that reside within it. Unfortunately, this is a very broad summation of the profession. In reality, it's going to take a steady hand on the scanner and a stout heart to bravely traverse into the fringes of space where the dead lie, and blindly hope that you don't fall prey to the same hazards that have claimed the lives of those who once inhabited the wrecks that have been cast out before you. I imagine a career in salvaging to be a lot like something out of the first scene in Aliens, where a boom arm is seen cutting an access path into the side of the ship's interior. A scanning drone enters first through the opening and starts to survey the surroundings, searching for breathable atmosphere, hazards, and potential points of interest. What lies beyond that breach will be a constant surprise filled with possibilities and disappointment, terror and riches for those who are brave or foolish enough to transgress beyond the threshold of dead space and be the first to disturb its tomb-like solace. I'd like to state as a disclaimer that some of this information is years old and may have been abandoned in favor of new gameplay mechanics that have yet to be revealed, or may simply end up being put on the back burner for a bit while other aspects of the game take precedence. A certain degree of it is also my own attempt at theory crafting potentials based on the information they provided as to where future gameplay could lead and directions I'd like to see it go in. The act of salvaging can be broken down into two different categories. One aspect was referred to by Tony Z as scavenging. This is the extraction of every last functioning component from a ship. This includes weapons, engines, cargo, and even any remnants of computer information that can be found in the ship's databanks. Anything that has survived whatever fate has befallen the derelict can be taken back with you for personal use or sold for profit. The other aspect is referred to as scrapping. This is where you're stripping the hull of any remaining material directly off what's left of the ship. This is the act of physically pulling off the metal plating from the chassis, wings, and cockpit and grinding it down into its base components and stored for later use or for resale. You may also run across large fields of space debris that consist of the shredded remains of ships that have been reduced to shards so small that they no longer hold any semblance of its original form. This makes them easier to collect and be broken down into raw materials. Scavenging is when you find at least the partial husk of a ship that's taken so much damage that the original occupant was forced to abandon its skeletal carapace and left it floating dead in space. Any number of elements could still remain on the ship in perfect working order. Elements that can be collected will include weapons, any form of components, what remains of its cargo, and even intel from the ship's nav computer. Collecting intel that still resides within the ship's computer banks could provide information that can be sold off to interested parties. This can include vital bits of research data, detailed scanner information that's focused on a particular sector, which in turn could reveal even more bits of information, like the location of pirate bases, caches of goodies, open hangars, veins of precious metals, more derelict sites, or even some pre-existing nav points displaying areas of interest and new locations for you to explore. Any information you acquire can be sold off and in some instances can provide you with royalties from the people who choose to further exploit these findings. This is one of my favorite aspects of scavenging. The ability to extract computer information can provide a whole new facet to gameplay and the potential to extend out the scope of not only what a wreckage can yield, but can continue your journey on in a variety of new and interesting ways. If you don't have the right ship or manpower to exploit these findings yourself, you can always sell the information off to those who can, and still end up gaining from it. It's always going to be a win-win. The materials that make up the outer skin of a ship are going to be distributed in kind of a logical fashion so that experienced players can go right to the parts that are made from more expensive materials and strip the most valuable pieces from it first. For instance, the ship may have titanium armor, which is more valuable than the rest of the ship's plating, so going for that first would make the most sense. Or a certain ship's wings could be fashioned out of a far more expensive material than the rest of it. Or the plasteel elements of the canopy and viewing parts could be the most expensive parts that are left on the outer hull. This is going to create different tiers of players, some of which are going to only be interested in the most valuable pieces and will quickly move on to the next wreck to scrap after the best parts have been collected. This is going to be the safest method of scavenging, attracts the least amount of attention, and guarantees that you'll fill your hull with only the best material, thus maximizing the earning potential of every run. While other players may be looking to reduce an entire ship down to the frame, leaving nothing of value behind, maximizing what they get out of every find. The Can't always guarantee that there'll be another wreck in your sector to exploit, and sometimes you must learn to squeeze every last credit out of what you have. The damage shaders that have already been implemented into the game lend themselves to visually supporting the scrapping function. Think of scrapping as the direct opposite of repairing a ship. Instead of building the ship up in one section at a time, you're going to be doing the inverse and tearing it down in the same fashion. Broken down material is then stored in the ship's hold. Another aspect of the salvage mechanic is going to include search and recovery operations, where players will have to exit their spacecraft and maneuvering units in order to explore a wreckage. Pocket spacecraft like the Cutter will support such endeavors by carrying tools and supplies as well as handling the transportation of recovered artifacts back to the ship. EVAing players can use equipment like the multi-tool to cut ships' weapons from their gimbals for extraction, or help in manually stripping ships down. Cutters and welders can also be helpful in cutting their way into locked or jammed doors, opening locked access panels, freeing cargo bay entrances that have rusted shut, or opening interior vaults and safes where the real prizes are going to be found. This of course is going to cost time, which is a precious commodity when every second can bring unwanted attention down upon you. Ships like the Reclaimer come equipped with a variety of tools at their disposal to aid in search and recovery operations, including huge opposable floodlights, tractor beams, surveyor-class drones for cursory searches of the derelict, and support craft like the Cutter. The devs have put creating a certain kind of event at the top of their list of priorities when it comes to salvaging. This is the kind of scenario that sounds like it's right out of a sci-fi horror movie. Hidden within the bowels of these large carcasses of former ships may lie something that no sane person should be forced to bear witness to. Hidden within the shadowy corridors may lie unseen horrors and creatures. The possibility of such a creature transplanting over to your ship will be a very real threat if not taken care of. Think of the maleficent horror of Giger's alien or some form of tyrannid that's been coaxed out from the shelter of its space hulk, stalking you as you walk the already creepily dim hallways. All it takes is one encounter with such a beast and you'll never take the cold emptiness of space for granted again. Coming across the remains of a large derelict ship is going to represent one of the most interesting and challenging finds for a salvager to come across. The main ship will start by going to work scanning and identifying the sections of the hull which are constructed from the most valuable material and begin the process of stripping it down, while a team of people make their way inside searching for salvageable components, spare cargo, weapons lockers, unique ship flair, information from the computers, anything really that they deem worthy of being brought back to the ship. Some very real threats may exist in this ship from within and from without. You managed to find this wrecked ship and it may be only a matter of time before others find it as well. Competitors may arrive and exercise their right to also scavenge the ship, possibly turning hostile if that claim is challenged. Or worse, pirates may come to investigate, or a vandal raiding party could appear and attack. The team inside is no less vulnerable. They could run across survivors who might have been pirates or smugglers by trade and distrust your presence in the ship. They may see that their best chance of survival is to kill you and take your ship. The salvage team also runs the risk of being left behind if their ride takes too much damage from attacking ships or decides that discretion is the better part of valor and just simply leaves before any combat can take place. Other hazards could include meteor showers, secondary explosions caused when the last functional components within the ship starts to fail, causing damage to those in proximity to the blast, and possibly explosive decompression if you're standing in an intact portion of the wreckage when the blast goes off. These missions could also easily transition into becoming a rescue operation if friendly survivors are found having taken refuge among the ship's interior who are possibly injured, furthering the need for a medical ship to come and evac them off to safety. The role of a salvage ship isn't going to be delineated to simply randomly flying about on its own looking for bits of scrap to pick up. They could also be a rather integral part to any armada or caravan of ships. First off, a salvager can provide a repair ship with all the resources it needs to continue to provide its services to the rest of the fleet. A main advantage to working with an armada of ships is protection. Some of the most lucrative caches of scrap are going to be found in areas that are too dangerous to be venturing into alone. Some of the largest fields of debris are going to start to appear once orgs begin going to battle with one another. It might not take too kindly to you picking over the remains of their comrades' half-decayed ships. They may even go as far as to leave a security detachment behind to guard over it while waiting for their own reclaimers to get there. The Armada can also offer protection from small groups of marauders, pirates, and other salvagers, allowing you to spend as much time as you want deconstructing wrecks. You can also sell off the cheaper material to your Armada's crucible and keep the most expensive stuff for resale later on. Other sites where large amounts of destroyed vessels are going to be found could be the result of some kind of natural disaster like a micro black hole, gravity well, or some non-Euclidean space anomaly. and if you're not careful, it could just as easily claim your ship as well. Having a safety net of other ships close by could be the difference between a massive payday or being added to the pile of debris. You can even benefit from the Armada in other ways. For instance, any exploration ship can use their long-range scanners to help spot new wrecks for you to explore. Repair ships can provide an immediate source for you to sell excess scrap to, while other ships can provide additional assistance in the form of security, refueling, and medical care. By selling and buying from one another, each ship can act as a vital element in creating their own microeconomy within the Armada. Derelict capital ships and abandoned space stations are going to be a tangible thing that you could come across. Granted, this would be one of the best finds of a salvager's career and won't be something that could be counted upon to put food on the table on a daily basis. Ideally, the mechanics of what can and can't be done with such a hulking beast are still being determined by the devs, but the possibility exists of being able to strip it down to its bare components, weapons, and systems. Even if such a find is deemed to be unsalvageable, you could still sell off its coordinates for a hefty profit. To be able to successfully take it apart in its entirety would require the resources of an entire org. It would only be a matter of time before more people come to claim it partially or in full as their own, as this site slowly starts to degenerate into bedlam, eventually becoming its own little reenactment of the Battle of the Five Armies. The Terravan Shield is a good example of the first in many types of alien tech that represents items that for their size will far exceed the performance of other components and items that fit into the same category. Coming across such an item like this while scavenging is going to be a rarity, but one that's going to be well worth the effort. To quote David Haddock, "If you want to maintain that specific, harder to find part, you'd have to venture out into the far reaches of the universe and hunt it down." Alien tech is going to appear in all forms, from new weapons, armor, ship components, and ship weaponry. This is an untapped resource whose boundaries can extend as far as the developers wish to go with it. I'm sure that new additions and new forms of alien tech are going to be constantly seeded into build updates for years to come. Coming across a partially intact, unknown alien ship is also going to be a very tangible possibility where any surviving aspect of it will yield a plethora of rare components for the discoverer to plunder. The nav computer may have coordinates leading to a potentially unknown jump point. There may be schematics on their engine and weapon specs that can be researched, or there may be information that sets you upon the path to hunt for your first artifact. The ship's hull may be comprised of some kind of foreign material that can be sold or sent to a researcher so that more of it can be crafted for your personal use. All of these items are going to be incredibly rare, overpowered, and extremely valuable. One option for salvagers that's been completely ignored up till now is to take a relatively intact husk of a ship, if you can find one that hasn't been sheared in half or is floating in pieces, and to try and get its systems back online, possibly doing the bare minimum amount of repairs on the quantum drive and the engine so that you can fly it back to your hangar, assuming of course once that option becomes available. From there you can continue doing repairs on it at your leisure. I could imagine spending my off time doing repairs on a derelict that I found while waiting for my friends to join me online, or on days when my org is less active. Eventually you're going to be able to restore even a large vessel that can be sold or added to your fleet of ships. Traveling with a group of scavengers may prove to be more advantageous than I originally thought. The process of stripping a frame of all of its layers may become a laborious process even for a reclaimer. If a series of salvagers band together, they can make short work of an entire ship and be off to the next point of interest before more ships get the chance to move in on your location. Other hazards can include meteor showers, the attention of pirates, other scavengers, and any number of hostile alien races like the Vandal, or even indigenous creatures that are attracted by all the commotion, lights, and movement. The quicker you can work, the more likely it is that you'll avoid these dangers. Finally, I wanted to take a brief look at the Reclaimer. As of right now, it's the only ship in Star Citizen that's specifically suited for a career in salvage retrieval, but I expect that more salvage-orientated ships will eventually be added to the ship lineup. Just as in the future, I expect for a lot more of the smaller, dedicated versions of the larger utility ships to start appearing, like what the Prospector is to the Orion. There's still a huge hole in the ship lineup with regards to the smaller and mid-sized utility vessels, including salvage, repair, and refueling, just to name a few. The Reclaimer represents the apex in the evolution of salvage operations. It comes with a massive salvage arm that looks like it's never going to cease being fun to use, a huge cargo hold capable of storing a constellation's worth of salvage, a manned cutter, an onboard processing station, surveyor drones, a pocket spacecraft, and a series of multi-use hardpoints for mounting additional floodlights, tractor beams, missiles, scanners, or more weapons. It's a salvager's dream. The more I've looked into salvaging, the more I'm falling in love with the idea of it. The Reclaimer is an amazing looking ship, and although it's most likely not going to be a part of 3.0, there's a very real possibility that it could make an appearance as soon as 3.1 or even in the 3.2 update. As a disclaimer, the schedule for CIG is always changing, and new announcements may have already been made since I posted this video. With the creation of planetside, or should I say rather moonside wrecks, the scavenging aspect of this profession is going to be a real thing in 3.0 for people to start indulging in regardless of what kind of ship you own. I'm planning on doing plenty of this in my little Cutlass Scavenger, which I've already named, well, Slave 1 is already taken, so I guess I'll have to call it Slave 1.0 or Slave 1.5 or something. Well, that's all I have on salvaging until more information comes out. Thank you for your time, I hope you enjoy the rest of your day, and I'll catch you again in the next video.